Here we go. I'm not repeating these, so I'm going to tell you what it is. See how smart you are. Miss Soderstrom, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that was a part of XCOM? Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that was part of XCOM. Whenever you're ready to give me a name, I'll be thrilled.
I have it right here, but I don't know.
Well, I'm prepared to wait till hell freezes over, if that's your intention.
Come on,
Somebody else can answer it.
give her a chance. Mr. DeBolt.
Wow, I'm not answering.
Go ahead. Okay,
Better for that.
Maxwell Taylor.
Maxwell Taylor. Okay, Miss Jones, who was National Security Advisor under JFK during the crisis? National Security Advisor. I just happen to have a signature of him up here, right here. McGeorge Bundy. Okay, Miss Clark, who was the Soviet ambassador that made the final deal with Robert Kennedy ending the crisis? I just happen to have a picture of him and a signature right here. Well, you better get your notes in, this never come to school.
What was the question?
Repeat that? I will. Soviet ambassador that made the final deal with Robert Kennedy ending the crisis. I just gave you a thing there, Jess. I just gave you a handout that will tell you the answer there. Anatoly Dobrynin. Very good. Miss Soderstrom, who was the journalist whom JFK and Bobby leaked a story to about trading missiles in Turkey for those in Cuba? Who was the journalist whom JFK and Bobby leaked a story to about trading missiles in Turkey for those in Cuba? Now, you guys, when you're doing your IDs, are you highlighting your IDs when you're taking your notes?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be easier. These are all off of IDs.
What?
Yeah, they're all off of
What
IDs.
day is it?
I don't know. Who was the journalist whom JFK and Bobby leaked the story to about trading missiles in Turkey for those in Cuba? Miss Ermentrout. Walter Lippmann. Very good, Walter Lippmann. Okay, Miss Lemke. Who was the former Secretary of State whom JFK appointed to XCOM to get the views of the conservative Democrats? He was Secretary of State under Truman, and JFK put him on XCOM because he wanted the views of conservative Democrats. Shh. Go ahead. Nope. Burke?
Dean Atchison.
Dean Atchison. Okay. Then, hey, Lynn, who was President Kennedy's speechwriter during the Cuban Missile Crisis? Who wrote his speeches during the Cuban Missile Crisis? What? I think you said it. Theodore Sorensen. Very good. Okay, Saskia. Who was the pilot that was shot down and killed over Cuba on Saturday, October 27, 1962? What? Rudolph Anderson. Very good, thank you. Rudolph Anderson. Okay, Mr. Miller. Who was the key member of XCOM who was quoted as saying, quote, "We were eyeball to eyeball and the other fellow just blinked"? Just have to have a picture of him right up here, signed. He was Secretary of State under Kennedy.
Yeah, wasn't that back
He was Secretary of Defense.
then? It would have been O'Donnell.
No, he was the president's personal aide. Yes, sadly. Dean Rusk. Okay, Miss Stolitz. Who was the ABC correspondent that served as a go-between for President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis? I just happen to have a picture of him right here.
John Scaly.
Scally, very good, John Scally, thank you.
Wait, what was that question?
He was the ABC correspondent who served as a go-between for President Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, repeat the question.
No name.
John Scally. Okay, Mr. DeBolt. Who was the Air Force general who told President Kennedy he was in a pretty bad fix?
Curtis LeMay.
Curtis LeMay, very good. Delancey. Who was the pilot who was ordered not to get shot down and was asked to deliver the film he shot directly to the Pentagon? Pilot who was ordered not to get shot down and was later asked to deliver the film he shot directly to the Pentagon. Pilot who was ordered not to get shot down and was asked to deliver the film he shot directly to the Pentagon. Anybody? Saskia? What's that? What was his first name? Bert? William Eckert, yep. Okay, Sarah, who was the Soviet diplomat that denied to President Kennedy the Soviet Union's placing missiles in Cuba during their meeting early in the crisis? Soviet diplomat that denied to President Kennedy that the Soviets were placing missiles in Cuba. This meeting took place early in the crisis. It was a meeting that actually was already set up before the crisis. We got time. I wished I had a picture of signature him. Can't find one. Elf? Carolyn? Andre Gromyko. I'll give you, here you go, Sarah. Who was the Soviet spy in the United States who served as the go-between between Khrushchev and Kennedy during the crisis? The Soviet spy who negotiated or talked with John Scally. Soviet spy. I think you're going to say it. Alexander Fomin. Alexander Fomin. Okay, Carolyn. Who is the publisher of the Washington Times who delayed printing of a story prior to Kennedy's national television speech concerning the situation in Cuba? And he said he would regret it because he held on the Bay of Pigs and he regretted it the rest of his life. Who was that newspaper publisher? The Washington Times. Well, no,
No, that's the first name I saw. Orville Dreyfus.
Orville Dreyfus, very good. Okay, Courtney? Who was the man who President Kennedy stationed at the Pentagon during a majority of the Cuban Missile Crisis for communication purposes? He wanted somebody at the Pentagon when he put the quarantine in place to make sure there was no miscommunication on the rules of engagement. Who would he send over? He was a member of his cabinet. Secretary of Defense McNamara, very great. Okay, Shelby Hodges. Who was the admiral who got into a heated exchange with Secretary of Defense McNamara concerning the rules of engagement during the crisis? Who was the admiral who got into a heated exchange with Secretary of Defense McNamara at the Pentagon concerning the rules of engagement during the crisis? And his picture just happens to be right here. Looks kind of admiralish, doesn't it? Josh? George W. Anderson Jr. Thank you. Okay. Morgan? Who was the CIA director during the Cuban Missile Crisis? John McCone. Very good. Hadley? Who is the Soviet ambassador that feuded with Adlai Stevenson at the Security Council meeting of the United Nations? He was the guy, Stevenson said he would wait until hell froze over for his answer. B.A. Zorin, very good. B.A. Zorin, Soviet ambassador. Okay, keeping Carolyn in mind, Stacia, who was the general of the Air Force Tactical Air Command who told JFK that an airstrike could not guarantee 100% of the missiles in Cuba would be destroyed? He said he could get 100% of the ones he knew about, but he couldn't guarantee 100% of the missiles. Who was that? His brother teaches English here. Walter Sweeney, very good. And Shelby Reed, who was the mayor of Chicago that JFK did not want to cancel on concerning his meeting during the crisis? Richard Daley, very good. We have a picture of him too, right up here. Richard Daley, kind of a gruff looking old fart. Okay, Miss Carver. What was the name of the group that President Kennedy wanted a unanimous vote of support from concerning the quarantine line during the crisis? Ah?
I know what it is.
All right, well, I'm waiting for you. The group President Kennedy wanted a unanimous vote of support from concerning the quarantine line during the crisis. What was that group? OAS. He told Dean Russ to get one, a unanimous vote. Dean Russ said they've never had a unanimous vote.
Organization of American States.
Organization of American States, very good. Keaton, which DEFCON is it when it's considered the military's further increase in force readiness but less than maximum readiness? DEFCON what? 2, very good. DEFCON 2 is the military's military's further increase in force readiness, but less than maximum readiness. What's maximum readiness? What? DEFCON 1. Okay? Let's see. Mr. Sanchez. What was the American battleship that stopped, boarded, and inspected the Soviet ship Grozny? What was the name of the American battleship that stopped, boarded, and inspected the Soviet ship Grozny?
It's the USS Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr.
Very good. USS Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr. Okay, Shayna. What was the name of the group that President Kennedy wanted to ensure proof to that the Soviets were providing missiles to Cuba during the crisis? Yep. What was the name of the group that President Kennedy wanted to ensure proof to that the Soviets were providing missiles to Cuba during the crisis? He sent pictures on the advice of Pierre Salinger with Adlai Stevenson. To what organization? Not the United States. Saskia. United Nations. Okay? Okay, give me, Sequoia, one of the 2 Soviet ships that were first sighted near the quarantine zone during the crisis. One of the first 2. The Gagarin, and Jessica, give me the other one. Doesn't sound like it's spelled.
Hold on, I'm trying to.
Okay, the Gagarin is one of the first 2 ships, and what was the name of the other ship?
Was it the, I don't know how to pronounce it, was like.
Chemhoss. Yep. K-O-M-I-L-E-S is actually how it's spelled. Okay, Taryn. What was the name of the Soviet ship that was allowed to run the blockade because, quote, "we sure would look bad firing upon a ship full of baby poop"? We let it go, hoping it had no missiles, and it ended up not having any.
This is the one we didn't stop?
Yeah, we didn't stop, we just let it go. And found out later it did not have any weapons on it. Anybody? Burke?
The Bucharest.
The Bucharest. Very good. Bucharest, yep. Okay, I'll give you another shot, Taryn. What's the military's increase in force readiness above normal readiness? DEFCON what?
2.
Oh, we just talked about, no,
No,
DEFCON 2.
DEFCON 4, I was gonna.
Well, 3.
3?
Yeah, DEFCON 3. DEFCON 3 is the military's increase in force readiness above normal readiness, and DEFCON 2 is the military's further increase in force readiness, but less than maximum readiness, and DEFCON 1 is we're going to war. Okay? Okay, Mr. Miller, what was the presidential act that officially authorized the naval quarantine of Cuba during the crisis called? The presidential act that officially authorized the naval quarantine of Cuba during the crisis. It was a presidential act.
Proclamation 3504.
Proclamation 3504. Perfect. Okay, Delancey, what was the name of the American battleship that was stationed right at the quarantine zone that had the responsibility to follow the rules of engagement during the Cuban Missile Crisis?
USS John R. Pierce.
Very good. USS John R. Pierce.
What was the question?
The question was, what was the American battleship that was stationed at the quarantine zone, right at the line, that had the responsibility to follow the rules of engagement during the crisis? Remember President Kennedy told him to bring the sub to the surface and then delayed that order. Okay, and Hadley, here's the last one. What was the name of the military group that moved the United States to DEFCON 2 without President Kennedy's permission? SAC. Strategic Air Command. Okay, all of these questions will be in the form of matching tomorrow. They're all matching. And there are 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30. They'll be worth 3 apiece or 90. Tomorrow's 90. All matching.
Is there an essay?
Hey, good question here. There will be no extra answers. Every answer will have a definition. Yep.
So on the answer that was Strategic Air Command, they lowered it to DEFCON
2. Yeah, Strategic Air Command ordered the country down to DEFCON 2 without the president's permission. Could they actually